Welcome to the I Love Game Design podcast. I'm Charlie Burke. This is my YouTube channel, and I'm joined today by my friend Seven Coyne. Say hello to everyone, Seven.
Hello.
Seven, today we're here to talk about Generation 2 of Pokemon, because that's the generation we both grew up with. We have a lot of fondness and nostalgia for it, and we're going to use Generation 2 of Pokemon as just a jumping off point to talk about other creature collectors and other things this genre is doing. So I'm really excited for our conversation today. I'm going to try to lead us through it and get us to hit as many different points as possible. But first, maybe you could just tell me, what do you like about Generation 2 of Pokemon?
Yeah, that's pretty broad. I think I've told you this before, but it's something that it's kind of like very near and dear to my heart. I remember my mom, she got me and my brother copies of Pokemon Gold and Silver, but they were in like Japanese. And so I played through the entire game like in Japanese, because she gave us she also got us like this little book that was like for people who did this, like Americans who were trying to play through the game, and it had like little phrases and so like I lost all of this knowledge later in life, but I remember as a little kid like slowly memorizing like little bits of like what Ember was or whatever in like little Pokemon kanji. But I like the first time playing through Gold and Silver, I literally couldn't read any of the text, even though I think by that point I think I was old enough that I was like reading, regular video games. So I think that's one thing that kind of strikes me, is that like a lot of the earliest Pokemon games, are definitely made for like little kids, and like it's something that I remember. I think the first thing that jumps to me when you say like, oh, what do you like about Pokemon Gold and Silver? But especially when I was a kid, I really liked the like weekly and daily events. That felt like such a big jump from Red and Blue and Yellow, especially when you're a little kid, right? Like Monday, like going through a week feels like you're going through a whole month. And so like finding all of the little guys, like the day of the week siblings who will give you items, having bug catching on a specific day. Also, I think there's like the black market has like a specific time frame. There's all these different events that correspond to your real life.
Yeah.
Like the first thing that you do when you start those games is, what time is it? And, the big feature of Gold and Silver are the day-night cycles. Like certain Pokemon can be catched in the day, certain Pokemon can be catched in the night. It's interesting that like they have this big sun and moon type philosophy, but like the box legendaries don't involve that, the story doesn't involve that. It feels like something that they were just excited that they could do for this one.
Yeah.
And so it just added to the world, and I think I don't know, I think it's something that is maybe understated but pretty charming.
You come to a really interesting point, which is especially the day-night cycle. Playing it now as an adult kind of annoyed me.
Yeah.
So I played back through for this podcast, and I did that just to see what it was again, see what it was like. And I wanted to catch a Wooper for my team, but you can only catch Wooper at night. So I ended up resetting the clock so I could catch a Wooper. And I wanted to catch a Hoothoot for my team. And that I managed to time it right so that I could catch a Hoothoot. But it was this really funny thing where when I was a kid, I don't think this would have bothered me, right? Like,
Sure.
When I was a kid, I would have just waited another day. But because I was trying to marathon it and go fast and move at a fast rate through this game, I think I couldn't properly appreciate the day-night cycle. And I remember thinking, I almost wish it worked like Harvest Moon right now. As an adult, I wish it worked like Harvest Moon, where the days were in-game days and like you could move through 3 days in a 2-hour session. And I thought that would be so cool and fun, and I was reflecting, I think as a kid though, there's something immersive about it is night outside and I am playing this Pokemon game where it's also night. And I loved the night in this game because the windows would get yellow on all the buildings, like they were glowing with light, and they just looked so cozy. And so the world felt cozy, even as you were outside in the game. It made you feel cozy being in your home because you were looking at all those homes that looked so cozy.
I have like a very visceral childhood memory of being in the car, being driven somewhere, and I had like one of those Game Boy lights that like it probably destroyed the battery life, but it was like a little LED light that you would stick onto like the side of the Game Boy, and it would let you play at night. And I when I think of Gold and Silver, one of the like main images is like of Goldenrod at night. The original pitch of the first two Pokemon games is very much like being a child in Japan and like hunting bugs and catching butterflies and catching like, you know, catching bugs in the summer. And that's kind of the inspiration for Pokemon. And so like certain bugs are just not out during different times of day. And part of the joy is like, oh, what will you find? And not, you want to catch a Wooper. And like there's like a spontaneity that like as an adult you want to finish, you have a job, you have things that are like important to you, your schedule is a little inflexible, and as a kid like you can just be, oh whatever, I'll get this guy because he's cute, or I'll get this guy because I found him and I think he looks funny, you know, I named him something terrible. Like,
I think that gets somewhat to also one of the core ideas of creature collectors in general. What makes them so fun is that they're about exploring a world, but the main thing you're exploring is the creatures in that world. Because creatures are just instantly kind of relatable. And I just remember having a friend say he remembered playing Generation 1, and you know, you'd just go into the grass and you'd see a new Pokemon and be like, whoa, what's that? And you'd go into a cave and you'd see a Zubat for the first time before you realized they were everywhere in that cave and annoying as heck. Can't swear. And you'd be like, whoa, you know, what, Zubat, what the? And there really is something about that sense of discovery. And I actually think Johto does such a good job because it gets both the Generation 1 and Generation 2 Pokemon. I was thinking about those first routes. And on that first route, it's not just like Rattata and Pidgey. It's also Sentret. And it's also Hoothoot. Combining all those, and then also Geodude a little off, and Spearow a little off the route. And then the next route has the bug Pokemon, where you're already encountering new bugs. And it's amazing how many new Pokemon, and old Pokemon, but just how many Pokemon you're encountering in such a small space right at the beginning.
I think that, so, and this is like a pet theory that I've had, but I think part of the, and like this is like based on, you know, being just a little kid in school, in like an American school. I don't know if this is true of Japan, but like whenever you're a kid, when are you going to most likely begin playing Pokemon Gold and Silver? Probably, you know, after school, 3 o'clock or in the afternoon or something, right?
Yeah.
By the time you get through the first little bit of the game and get the ability to capture Pokemon, it's probably like 5 o'clock, maybe 6, right? I don't know exactly when the evening period hits, but by the time you get through the tutorial part, the two Pokemon that are on early routes that are at night are Spinarak and Hoothoot. And so you begin the game seeing Pidgey and Rattata and Ferret, which Ferret's new, but like you see like mostly stuff that you've seen before, especially if you're a kid who's played the other games, right? And then at night it opens up and you see two. I think it's intended that like you will quickly see these new things and like it'll feel like, oh, anytime during the day there could be something I should check. It's a very subtle tutorial, I feel like, but it's almost telling you like, hey, check routes at different times of day and you will see different stuff.
Just because you say it's a subtle tutorial, I want to bring up something I found. We're going to get back to things we just unequivocally loved, but replaying something I found really weird was how it takes you a really long time to get kind of good moves for your starter Pokemon. And I was thinking, I think that's because they're tutorializing. I think they deliberately hold off on those moves because they don't want you to encounter the text, "it was super effective," until you're a little while into the game. Modern Pokemon games want you to figure out the super effective, not very effective, basically from the jump. They think that's kind of their pitch. Whereas these games are kind of content to not have you encounter that. And so not even have a stab move. So you can't risk accidentally super effectiving one of those bug Pokemon with your fire move. They're content to save that for you. And I think that's really interesting. I don't know that I like that, but you know what? In addition to it tutorializing, something I found interesting about it is it contributed to the jagged curve of an RPG. So maybe you've heard, you don't want just a smooth difficulty curve or a smooth level curve. And especially in an RPG, you want these moments of feeling overpowered so that you feel like you got more powerful. And Pokemon is accomplishing that in a few ways, but in Generation 2, one of the ways it's actually accomplishing that is kind of by giving you pretty crappy moves. And I don't think this is a good way to accomplish it. But, so I had Cyndaquil, and when I got Ember, it was a pretty big deal and a pretty big upgrade, because it was his first stab move, and it was his first special attack, both of which are very good for Cyndaquil. And then I didn't get another kind of move upgrade like that until he learned Flame Wheel at that might have been like level 20 or 30. Like,
I think Flame Wheel, let me check this out. Hold on. Flame Wheel.
Level 33 is my guess. That's my guess.
I think it's 14 is my guess.
No. I just played this.
But
There's
that might
no
be
way.
that might be in modern games, which might
That's
prove
in
some
modern
of your point.
games. Look at the Cerebi Dex Gen 2.
Yeah, that's what I'm check.
I'm going to Quilava because I'm sure it was Quilava. Level 31.
Yeah, 31. Yeah. Out of curiosity, I want to look it up in a modern game. Level 20. So it learns it way earlier in a modern game.
Yeah.
Because I remember Flame Wheel is kind of your bread and butter if you pick Quilava. I think you're right. I think Quilava doesn't learn anything better, and like probably Bayleaf doesn't learn anything better than Razor Leaf for a very long time.
The better move that you can get is Fire Punch, but Quilava can't learn Fire Punch. You can't teach it until he's Typhlosion. So Ember is your best move from levels 12 to 31, which insane from a modern context. Like, I think people forget this. I forgot this.
I don't remember this.
So I was playing all Gen 2 Mons, and I was doing Typhlosion, Quagsire, Mareep's evolution, Hoppip's evolution.
Flaffy and Ampharos.
Ampharos, Jumpluff, and a Noctowl. That was my team of 5, and I picked up an Ursaring at the end for the Elite Four.
Cool.
I didn't do Kanto. Didn't have time. But those were my 5, and I want to talk about Jumpluff, because Jumpluff gets hate. But no, first, Quilava has Ember from level 12 to like 31, and then Wooper/Quagsire, first off, they're a physical attacker, not a special attacker, so their water move is already kind of weakened by that. But second, they just have Water Gun until eventually you finally get Surf in the 4th Gym Town. So you want this jagged level curve, right? Where it's getting harder and then you get this kind of power boost, and so it gets easier really quickly all at once until everything levels up to fight you again. And you want that jagged difficulty curve in an RPG because you want these moments of power fantasy. You want these moments where it's like, this stuff was giving me trouble and now I can beat it all. Yeah. So Gen 2 accomplishes that in a few ways. I think every level makes you a little more powerful, but especially new moves and especially evolutions are these big moments where, like, when Wooper becomes Quagsire, he goes from pretty much useless to pretty great. And when Wooper goes from Water Gun to Surf, he has another moment where he goes from pretty much useless to pretty great. But there is this weirdness to Gen 2. The moves aren't very good, but I think that's, 1, for the tutorial, and 2, to make the moments where you get new moves all the more impactful. Mm-hmm. But no, I take the modern games any day. Like, the modern movesets, I'd rather get more better moves faster.
I think it's also just like earlier games, they knew you had time.
That's true.
You're 7. What are you going to do? The more modern game, I forget what this is another thing I wish I could have pulled a quote from, but there was someone on the design team for, I think, Sword and Shield, who was like saying that, you know, they really don't think children have the like attention span to play modern games. Like they won't stick with things. So they've done all these things to like speed up Pokemon, and I think they really see the success of things like Pokemon Go or other like jump in, jump out games to like, they're like, oh, Pokemon can't be this kind of slow, meandering thing anymore. And I also, 1, I don't know if that's true, and 2, I do think that like when these games were first made, speed was not a concern.
Yeah.
It's hard looking back because we have mega evolutions, and usually most games now kind of give you, no matter what the mechanic is, right? The new mechanic that's introduced every game is something that will like win the fight quickly, or like you can just kind of steamroll over whoever you're playing, like whatever trainer you're playing against. So you kind of, one, you can't lose, and two, you can take that ember and it will, be a giant crazy move.
Yeah.
Like you're probably getting something better faster, you're probably evolving faster, and you're probably winning. I would bet if you timed all of the times, like the times to beat trainers, I bet they go up significantly or the time gets lower significantly as you go through the games. Which is, I don't know if that's a bad thing. I think it's a different thing.
I think that design aesthetic of faster games is more in my direction, though I've always found Pokemon, I think even in Gen 2, honestly, I've found it frustrating that in the main story, in the main game, it doesn't seem to plunge the depths of what this strategy could be. But I don't know if there's a way around that, because they are games made for children. And I had a lot of fun this time playing with Jumpluff and having a kind of stall strategy with Jumpluff, where I would Leech Seed, Poison Powder, and then I had Synthesis and Headbutt hopefully to make him flinch. But I don't think there's much reason to do that usually. Usually you just get high power moves.
Can I tell you something wonderful about Jumpluff, actually?
Yeah.
Little baby Tom, I believe, I don't remember what my starter was, but I remember I had a Golem and I had a Jumpluff that were my absolute favorite little guys. And I just loved Jumpluff as a child, and I feel like I've been disappointed in every other game since when I've tried to use Jumpluff, because Jumpluff kind of sucks. But I remember I did something similar where it was all like Poison Powder or Toxic, and then like Sleep Powder. It had all of these. I was not a very tactical child, but I think I liked Jumpluff because it wasn't about, hitting with big moves. I think it was like live forever and poison people, and it was it was a way I had not played the game before, I don't think, at that point.
Yeah. No, I think Jumpluff in Generation 2 is great. Like, there might be better Pokemon in terms of the stats, but what I was able to get that Jumpluff to survive and kill for me, because by the end of the game, all my Pokemon were, like, totally underleveled. I entered the Elite Four with, like, my top Mon being, like, level 40, which is something else. Actually, something I love about Gen 2, I'm just kind of charmed by the Elite Four, the highest Pokemon level in the Elite Four is level 50, and all the rest are in their 40s. And I just think that Pokemon levels don't have to get all the way to 100. Like, I kind of wish they capped them at 50. This is my little soapbox, is Pokemon levels should be capped at 50. The games shouldn't be longer than getting to level 50. My brother was like, I'd agree with you, but Dragonair evolves at 55. And I'm like, have him evolve at 50. Like, I just don't think there's a reason to go past level 50. I think there's something about it.
You just want the games to end faster.
Yeah, a little bit. I am a little bit, despite us talking about how their charm for us as kids was how long they were. As an adult, I'm like, no. It's great that it's level 40 and I'm done.
I feel like, though, that's the appeal of all games. This is going outside your scope, but, like, Banjo-Kazooie, like big collectathon games. The games of our youth were meant to be played forever because your parents would buy you one game for 6 months to a year. And that game had to make it really last until Christmas or your birthday. And I feel like a lot of children grew up, had children, and are now I feel like kids today don't have that problem as much. / a lot of games are free because those games are Fortnite or whatever. Like, they're games that, like, don't lock their content. Like, they're infinite content for different reasons.
So I wanted to talk a little bit more about things we loved about the original Gen 2. And something I wanted to bring up is I really love the density of the world. And I just remember, especially like on the first routes, this feeling of we don't have the running shoes, but I don't exactly miss them because I feel like the route is small enough that I just feel like I'm going very far fairly fast, actually. And, I'm sure many people will disagree with me on that. But then the other thing is, I remember the Sprout Tower as this huge hulking thing. And granted, I used to play Totodile as a kid, and I was playing Cyndaquil this run. But hey, Seven, how many floors is the Sprout Tower.
I feel like, if I had to guess, I feel like it's 5, but now I'm worried that it's way less than that.
It's 3.
Ah.
I'm pretty sure. Maybe it's 3 in addition to the base.
Sure.
But my memory right now is that it's 3 because I was just shocked. I was done with the Sprout Tower in no time. And even the lighthouse, and the lighthouse is like 7 stories or something, felt fairly fast. I really felt like each side quest, like Rage, I remember that being quite the quest up. I think because I kept going back and forth on the Lake Rage, but you walk up and it's right there and you just swim in. It's like all the quests other than Team Rocket taking over Goldenrod. Team Rocket taking over Goldenrod goes on a little too long, but all the rest of the quests are actually pretty short. And I kind of appreciate that. It feels very dense. It feels very compact. It feels very put together in a way that I know we were talking about how the day-night cycle and the days of the week events make you encouraged to play for longer periods of time. And certainly if you're trying to grind up levels, I'm sure there's some encouragement there. But just in terms of movement, in terms of getting through different events, I felt like the events themselves went fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. And I felt like the world itself was very manageable, very explorable.
What was your final playtime of because you're right, it's like half the game because you're not doing Kanto, but was it 10 hours or 20 hours?
It was 16, but I also used a jump left strategy. Mm-hmm. And then here's the other kind of part of it. I changed which Pokemon I was using to my lowered level Pokemon shortly after the Steel Gym. Because what had ended up happening was my Ampharos, and then I may have had to grind my Quilava a bit before that gym. My Quilava had ended up being kind of more powerful than the rest of my team. And my Ampharos especially, because you have to surf across the water and fight a bunch of water Pokemon and water trainers. And so my Ampharos was using electric moves. But at that moment, those two were so high leveled that I needed to catch up my Wooper and my Hoppip and my Hoot, who were all evolved. My Noctowl and my Jumpluff and my Quagsire, I had to catch them up. And so for the next Team Rocket events, I was really playing with those guys and fighting pretty much every trainer I could to try to catch them up. So I never turned back, but I was using lower level Pokemon than I had to try to keep my team in lockstep, which is actually something I wanted to talk to you about. Mm-hmm. Generation 2 gets a lot of hate for its level curve. Do you remember this? Have you heard this before?
I've definitely heard this before. Again, I feel like the last time I played, I was probably in college. I put it very legally on my phone on an emulator.
Yes, of course.
And I think
very legally.
I think I just played through it there.
So legally, by the way, we could even say extra legally.
Yeah, extra legally. Yeah, of course.
That legally.
You wouldn't download a Pokemon,
So there's this weird thing, and a lot of people complain about it, where you beat the Steelix gym, and Steelix must be level 30 or something.
Let me check.
I don't even think my Quilava really held up to him. I think I had to use my Ampharos.
I love being able to just very quickly do fact checks on these. This is very fun. Steelix, hold on.
He's got to be 31 is my guess. What's his level?
Give me one sec. It is 35, level 35 in Gold and Silver.
So her Steelix is level 35, and then you're immediately fighting trainers who are level 20, level 25 maybe.
Sure.
And that's such a jump down that a lot of people are we can just steamroll these.
Uh-huh.
And what I took that as instead was an opportunity to be hey, my Ampharos is now 10 levels ahead of some of the rest of my team. I need them to catch up. And I think maybe the purpose of the level curve, the controversial level curve, is to encourage more even leveling in your team. But I don't think it's a good solution. It worked on me, especially because I love Gen 2. I kind of know what to expect, and I kind of went into that part of the game with oh, perfect, an opportunity to get everyone to where they need to be. Though that's why my playtime was higher.
Sure.
But there are other solutions to encourage even leveling. One of which is just not having a place where the water so clearly encourages certain types of Pokemon, and maybe not having the fighting gym's main guy be a water guy. But another, in the modern games, I really like that they do this EXP share, so your team kind of naturally balances out. And I also really like what they're doing with, okay, we're not going to give you rare candies all the time, but we'll give you these experience candies. I like these simple ways so that you can keep the levels getting higher that are maybe better solutions to even leveling. And I just was wondering, what do you think about that? What solutions have you seen to encourage even leveling of teams? Because in Pokemon, in Gold and Silver, frankly, it would be very easy to just over-level one Pokemon and get them to like level 50 and just steamroll everything with that one Pokemon.
So, as a dumb little child, and I think this is like as long as I can remember, I feel like I have done this. I rotate my Pokemon constantly, even when the type advantage is not there. I think this is like a form of OCD, but like as a child, I was always kind of doing an XP share rotation, sort of.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And I think that it maybe was enforced by playing this game or, you know, the older games as a child. Like, that was always my fear, was that you'd hit someone like Jasmine, and if all of your guys are... If there's a big discrepancy in their levels, you're just kind of screwed. So I was just thinking that, like, even when I play, like, ROM hacks or other games, I still do that. And unless there's... If there's an XP share, you just turn that on, and you're just kind of fine. Looking at other monster collector type games... Have you played Cassette Beasts yet?
I have not. I know it's one of your favorites. Go ahead and talk about it, though.
So, it's been a while since I've played Cassette Beasts, but I played a whole ton of that. In that game, you sort of level up, so you turn into the monsters based on, like, you capture them and you have, like, kind of a list. But you have, like, a buddy that you get. And I like games where you can spend time with your party members and, like, talk with them. Something that's really fun about Cassette Beasts is that when you get a new party member, you get new, like, Pokemon type things, but you also get, like, the trainers, and they come with one that you cannot catch out in the world. They kind of start with, like, a unique one, and then you can...
They start with a unique Cassette Beast.
Yes.
Got it.
So, like, there's a guy I remember who he is essentially like an animator, but his personal quest is all about him learning to, like, rediscover his art or whatever. So his Cassette Beast that he comes with is like a mushroom man that is all about changing its type. It's kind of mechanically a little unique. And so all of the party member Cassette Beasts are, I would say, a little bit stronger than the ones that you'd find in the wild. They're sort of like starters, I would say. But part of the joy of rotating through your party was that you would want to know, like, oh, what's this character's deal? Or who's this guy all about? You know? And, like, you want to, like, take a new character around so that you could, like, find out more of their story beats. And that was, you know, there are some people who would probably just, you know, if you don't find a character interesting, you just don't find them interesting. But I kind of liked all of the different characters. They all were pretty interesting to me. The short version, if you want to cut this together, the thing that I like about Cassette Beast, giving characters that you can get invested in and, like, try to rotate through, kind of naturally did what I was doing as a child, which is, like, rolling through, making sure that no character kind of got preference, and kind of kept everyone at a high level. And sometimes you would just go off and go, like, grind against, like, some weird monster just to, like, see, oh, I've moved the friendship meter so far, or I've figured out a little bit more of this character's story. And I think that's something that Pokemon could maybe learn from. I think they've maybe done stuff like that a little bit. I think just about every Pokemon game, there's, like, one trainer. Like, I think Steven in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, there's usually, like, a champion or someone who he has, like, Metagross. And I don't think in the original games you could catch Metagross anywhere. The way that you would get Metagross is after you beat the game, he gives you, like, an egg or something, or a baby Metagross. And I think that there's ways of, like, tying, like, story progression to characters so that you rotate through them, and, like, I don't know. I caught almost everything in Cassette Beast because I was just I just had so much fun learning about the characters.
Yeah, I'd shout out my personal favorite in the monster catching genre, Beastie Ball.
Yes.
Have you played it yet?
Downloaded it, but I haven't played it. I'm sorry to say.
I'm going to try to make a video soon, I think, on its combat system, just because I love that game. It's really hard to not have your Mon faint eventually. And just the whole way the combat system is built, and I will get into how the combat system is built in my other video, creates a necessity of rotating through your team. And actually, they build in a place a lot easier to rotate through your team within a battle. So in Pokemon, part of why it's difficult to keep your team evenly leveled is because you're never switching mid-battle with an individual Pokemon. They do let you switch whenever you feint another trainer's Pokemon, which is actually really nice for trying to keep a team even leveled, even though it's kind of cheating. I use it. But in Beastie Ball, mid-match, on the defense, you can switch, and it just encourages switching a lot more. But just in general, I think the whole combat system is designed in a way that means that you do need an even-leveled team to play well. But something else that is kind of tied up in this is, for me, this level curve where it suddenly had lower level Pokemon let me raise up these other Pokemon, but it would have also let me, I think at that moment after the 6th gym, it would have let me experiment with new Pokemon. It would have let me experiment with new members of a team, because I could catch some lower level Pokemon and there were some lower level trainers for me to fight them against. I didn't do that because I went in knowing what I wanted. And then by the time I kind of was like, ooh, it would be neat to have a Swinub on my team, I realized that it was going to level too slowly for where I was, and I'd kind of missed that golden opportunity. But I think this is the other kind of interesting question for me, and maybe you've already answered this, because you've said you caught all these extra monsters just to experiment with them and see their story. But I have this kind of question of, how do you make it so that late game experimentation with teams is doable? Because I always like that my Mons tend to be a little more powerful than the wild monsters. Mm-hmm. And toward the end of the game, that wasn't quite true. I mean, I did put an Ursaring on my team who was helpful for the Elite Four. But how do you let people find monsters in the wild that they might consider putting on their normal team without also kind of undercutting the work that people did to raise the monsters they currently have? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way. Here's a sad answer. I don't know if there's a way to do that. You should try out some of the Digimon story games. I think they're pretty fun. They do this thing, basically, like, you run around the environment and you can, like, kind of scan Digimon and then, like, add them to your team that way. And you have, like, a team of, like, 3. And then you have, like, kind of like a Pokemon bank where you can, like, dump them and level them up and do interesting things with them. I have never completed a Digimon story game, despite loving them, because towards the end of the game, I just kind of get, when you get so many resources, you kind of get to a point where you build, like, this engine of, like, you can just kind of make any of the ones that you want. And I think one of the flaws of those Digimon games is that kind of when you get towards the end of the game, you can totally just try out whoever you want. It becomes trivial to, like, bring someone to level 100 and fully evolve them, give them all the TMs you want. But they all sort of feel kind of samey. Like, the one light angel guy is kind of similar to any other guy who could do light damage in that game. So,
yeah,
I think it's fun. Like I said, I've gotten to the very end of those games and just never finished them. But I have played a lot of them, and I'm very excited for the new one that's coming out this year. And I'll just say, like, I think those are fun. If your goal is to get your players to see all of the, like, different little guys you made.
Yeah.
I do think that, like, and Pokemon's gotten better with this over time, but I think one solution that's maybe imperfect is give more tools to quickly raise up, like that Ursaring you got.
Yeah.
Like, raise it up. Like, I don't remember if EVs are in, I know IVs were, but I don't remember if EVs are in the earlier Pokemon games. But something that's tough about any Pokemon game is if you catch a Pokemon in the last, like, quarter of the game, it's going to be missing out on all of its EVs. So, like, it's going to, even if you catch it at a higher level, or, like, unless it's a legendary or something, right? Unless its stats are, like, crazy high, it's going to be kind of a sad addition to the team. I think that's, I don't know, the game should be encouraging, like, when you get to a place and you find something new, it should feel exciting and new the whole way through. I feel like in Pokemon games, that kind of drops off towards the middle, and your team is kind of solidified, and you're, at that point, just kind of drilling through the rest of the game. I think giving people more tools to try out new stuff, and also, later Pokemon games, I think, have done this well, making more Pokemon or creatures that are, like, mechanically unique. Like Pokemon, especially with, like, the new DLCs, right? You're kind of coming to those DLCs with full party. You're kind of just going there to see what's up and, like, see a new experience. But they fill those DLCs with kind of weird Pokemon that do weird things that are usually, like, kind of competitively focused, but it's neat to try and grab one of those and then raise one up, because like the matcha tea one is like has all these moves that like it no other Pokemon has, and you're seeing, like, at least in modern Pokemon, right, most modern Pokemon have a unique ability unique to them, or have a unique move that's unique to them, and I think they're realizing that more and more Pokemon kind of need that X factor, because earlier generations have a lot of Pokemon that like just kind of suck. and there are ways to remedy that too, but like giving them different forms or whatever. But if you want to pick up an interesting party member in a JRPG late, they have to be cool, for you to care.
Yeah. So there is something interesting actually that Beastie Ball does. But first, I was kind of hoping that maybe Cassette Beast had a solution, because you said the trainers transform into the Pokemon. Mm-hmm. So I was like, and it's the trainers that level up, if I recall from your description.
Yes.
So it seemed like that would be a solution, that because it's the trainers that are leveling up and not the Pokemon, that you'd be able to experiment with different Pokemon. And it's a bit of a different feel.
Yeah.
Because you're not leveling up monsters in the same way. And I think I prefer in Pokemon that it's a separate entity for me that I'm leveling up. Mm-hmm. But maybe that idea that you're a higher level trainer, so the Pokemon you transform into is now also high level? Does that not...
I think that it gave me a lot more freedom, like, later in the game to try stuff out or see, like, what was this guy... Like, there's, like, a traffic cone guy early in the game that's kind of like the game's Rattata, right? It's like a traffic cone hermit crab thing. And if you don't play with that guy, you kind of don't really know what his deal is. And later on in the game, the thing that's neat about Cassette Beasts is that the unlike Pokemon, right, where, like, say you miss a Krabby. You see Krabby and you're like, oh, I already have a water type. I don't need this guy. If you wanted to, like, go test out a Krabby later... You usually either have to do it on a whole new save, or you kind of have to go out of your way to, like, remove your water type, try this other guy out. Does he learn any cool stuff? The thing that's neat about Cassette Beast tying most of your stats, because I think monsters do have their own, like, element types and their own, I think they have their own stats. Like, they have things that they're good and bad at. But the majority of your stats come from the person using them. So, like, certain party members will be, like, better at, for better or worse, like magic attacks or like special attack, or some are like faster than others, or some are more bulky, right? And so you can kind of figure out and like test out like which one of these guys is like, how am I meant to use this hermit crab guy or this other guy that I kind of put in my box and didn't really think about. And I don't know, I think the lack of investment that you need is pretty cool. I think it's a really good way to just be like, hey, do you want to try out this guy? Do you want to try out that guy? Like, there's no pressure. And if you don't like a guy, well, you didn't just, like, if you tried to train up Krabby, that could be hours of your life, which when you're a kid is fine, but when you're an adult, like, it would kind of suck to, like, try out, like, what's up with, like, this Sinistea guy, and then you just kind of find out, oh, this guy sucks and I don't like him. You know
what's really fun that Beastie Ball does that does help this a bit, though it doesn't help it in the main story, is the post game has a mini version of the game that's a roguelike.
Ooh, okay.
And so you pick 2 starters, because you need 2 people on the court at all times, basically, to not lose. And then you don't, like, move around, you just do battles, but you make these decisions of fight the harder mons, get better rewards, and the rewards are, like, just automatically level up by 5 levels or something. And you just basically get to play the game in miniature. And you get to try out a bunch of monsters you didn't try out and see kind of their progression through a game would look like. So I love this idea. And I really loved just experimenting with it and discovering that if I do replay, I want the shark.
Yeah.
The little shark guy is super powerful, but has like some ability disadvantage. Anyway, I really liked that, but it's still... I don't know if I would have been able to very easily change my team late in the game. I also became attached to my guys because when you're playing Beastie Ball, they do a lot of things with the friendship mechanic that are really interesting. Cool. The Beasties in Beastie Ball become friends with each other. And so by the end of the game, all your Beasties are friends and you don't want to split them up. So I don't know if I would have changed late game how it would have felt level-wise, but it just felt wrong emotionally.
There needs to be... I think that there should be some kind of consideration, right? Because, like, in Cassette Beasts, part of the story is that these are not, like, living, breathing... Like, they're like, weird... they are monsters. They're, like, trying to kill you, and you just have the ability to turn into them and fight as them. It's not like you're getting a little buddy. And I remember playing Cassette Beast and kind of thinking like, oh, this is kind of a bummer. But it's because it's more about like, it's more like a JRPG where you turn into monsters, and it's about like hanging out with your party members and uncovering the world, than like going on a little quest with like your little animal buddies. And I do think that like you need to have a balance between just experimentation and like you kind of do want people to like form a bond with like your team. Like you want to finish and emotionally feel, it's corny when you're an adult, but like especially when you're a kid, like you feel attached to certain guys on your team, or you have like these moments where you remember like, oh, the critical hit landed right when it needed to, or like, I don't know, like they evolved in a critical moment or something. Like there's a weird balance you have to hit, right?
I remember discovering Crobat because I just liked Golbat. And I didn't even know I was good friends with my Golbat until my Golbat evolved. And I didn't know, I think I probably thought it was a level thing. But I remember discovering Crobat. I remember my Golbat evolving because I was just training him because I liked him. And being like, holy cow!
Yeah.
There's another one! But I do think, we've talked about this before and you've said this really well, where there's something about Pokemon and its appeal as a child that is, you are watching these creatures grow up.
Yeah.
Part of the power fantasy is just these creatures are getting bigger, and you're a small child and imagining yourself growing up, and you're watching these creatures get bigger. I think it's just fun for all these games. Captain Crunch released a little game where you raised little Crunch pets when we were kids, and I loved that. I loved the jagged difficulty curve, to bring it back to an earlier thing in this game. Because you'd be leveling up your guy, eventually you'd get better speed stats or better jump stats, and then the mini games you played with him would become easier. And I really loved that. That was fun. Yeah, it's just there's something about watching them evolve and grow up that you get really attached to them. And I do think that's going to be the part that's going to make late game experimentation kind of just impossible.
Sure.
Is like, even if you could make it easy to raise up another Pokemon, and modern Pokemon games kind of do, with, I really like those extra candies that you kind of get very freely all the time. And I like the automatic EXP share. Even doing all that, if the game is doing everything else right, it'll still be hard to change teams late game.
Yeah.
Because you'll be attached to that team.
Yeah.
Something else I wanted to talk about Generation 2 that is controversial is the story. Do you remember much about the story of Generation 2?
I do. In that it doesn't exist, really.
Yeah. Team Rocket is kind of in the background. They're trying to come back, and that could be called the story. But it's not threatening in the same way, and I love it. Like, it's controversial because people are like, why wouldn't you want a better story? What's wrong with good story? Why wouldn't you want good story on top of this? And the answer is because my Pokemon game, the story is about me becoming champion.
Yeah.
And the other stuff, the Team Rocket stuff, whoever I'm fighting, that to me feels like it should feel like side content. Because that's not the story of how me and my team became champions. And so there's something about Ruby and Sapphire, which I love Ruby and Sapphire. I don't know if I love Gen 2 or Gen 3 more. I think Gen 2, but it might be nostalgia. But I really do love Ruby and Sapphire. But in Ruby and Sapphire, you save the world and then fight the 8th gym. It's so that you can go become Pokemon League champion. And it's like, what?
That's also the pattern of every Pokemon game, I think, since Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah.
I think something interesting about Red, like, in Red and Blue, you're fighting an evil crime organization that's doing, like, a weird, spooky experiment, right? In Gold and Silver, you're kind of on a big adventure, and then you just kind of happen to stop crimes as you find them. It's always kind of felt like there are Gens 1 and 2... and then there's everything after. And they're kind of, like, separate. Because every single Pokemon game after is you save the world, you get a legendary, and then you go use that legendary to fight the Elite Four. Like, you're encouraged to bring... were you able to bring... I don't know if you played Gold or Silver, but were you able to bring Lugia or Ho-Oh to the Elite Four?
I believe I would have been able to, but I somehow just missed Master Ball, and so I didn't want to bother to go catch him, and I was running low on time before talking to you, so I skipped it. It was fully side content.
Yeah.
Like, I also want to point out, so, you get, I think, the key item to go find Ho-Oh. I think I did get that after, like, saving the radio tower, or maybe I had to talk to someone and forgot to, but I think it's supposed to happen after saving the radio tower, which is the climactic Team Rocket fight. And that climactic fight is introduced with, like, a phone call from Professor Elm, where he basically says, hey, have you heard what's happening in Goldenrod? Weird. Anyway, bye. Like, he doesn't think that this is your job. No one thinks it's your job to go fight Team Rocket. No one's like, 10-year-old, you must save the world. They're just chatting. And, like, the game won't let you progress unless you do go fight Team Rocket. But it really does just feel like a side quest. And Ho-Oh is absolutely a side quest because I did not get Ho-Oh. And I still saw the credits roll.
That's really funny.
So
are Gold and Silver primarily just the childhood fantasy of being able to have your own cell phone? Like, I think I've said this before, like when I was talking about like Pokemon games are about growing up and feeling like a grown up when you're a little baby. Like, that's why getting the bike feels like you're getting a car, because when you're 9, like, that's what it is it's like a bunch of agency and it's the ability to go where you want finally. And it's why the bike is so big in all of these games. But I think that, like, whenever Pokemon leans into specifically, and this is, I think, a specific, not a monster catching thing, but specifically a Pokemon thing, is that, like, whenever it leans into Pokemon as growing up metaphor, I think that that's, like, good fundamentally.
yeah I love the bike example. I forgot the cell phone, even though it's part of the crucial part of the, like,
that's the
thing.
big
it's
thing.
Part of your Pokegear. And I just mentioned it. I just mentioned he calls you, but cell phones are so ubiquitous today that I didn't even think about it.
I remember thinking as a child, because when did Gold and Silver come out? Probably like 2000 or 2001, right? Like,
we were
little.
We were young.
And, like, I remember thinking, it was before cell phones had, like, taken over the entire planet and, like, our entire culture.
I didn't get a cell phone till high school.
Yeah.
But in Pokemon, I had a cell phone at, like, kindergarten.
And that's cool.
So,
That's cool. I feel like to a little kid now, even, like, I don't know what age kids get cell phones now. There's no children anywhere near my life.
Frighteningly young.
I'm sure it's But until they get that cell phone, I'm sure that's a dream,
Yeah. I wanted to bring something else up as a weird design in Gen 2 that's kind of been being phased out of modern Pokemon games, and that's HMs. Yes. And that's because, like, I'm really frustrated. I'm really frustrated with the fact that HMs are a bad idea because, listen, I know this sounds stupid, but on paper, I think they're a great idea. Like, because there's this idea in game design of dual purpose design. The idea that everything you're trying to do should accomplish more than one thing. So, like, Mark Brown does a video on it, and he uses Downwell as an example of, like, the bullets you shoot down in Downwell. In Downwell, you're falling down a well, and you're trying to survive. And the bullets you shoot down both hurt enemies and kind of boost you up so you can see better as you fall. And stomping on enemies both kills them without doing any bullets, but also increases your combo, but also, like, refills your bullets. And it's like everything's doing two things at once. And in Pokemon, where everything's about battling, the idea that the way you'd interact with the overworld is through battle moves seems brilliant. Like, that's absolutely how the moves you use to battle should be the way you interact with the overworld. But then in practice, especially because you can't delete HMs and because Pokemon can only have so many moves, it ultimately means that, like my Typhlosion had cut. I beat the Elite Four with a Typhlosion who knew cut. And it's just not a good move.
I think this is why HMs are a bad idea, is mostly that they suck. Like, Fly, great. Fly is a good move. Surf. Great move. But the problem that
Yeah.
like, the problem that arises, right? Like the game design fundamental problem is that you need to make it so that every Pokemon can learn Cut and Strength and Rock Climb and whatever else, like Flash. Those moves have to be pretty ubiquitous so that if you're a little kid, it doesn't really matter which Pokemon you get. You'll have something that can use those combinations to progress the game. Like, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to make those moves good because every water type every child has ever has had Surf, right? Every bird that every Pokemon trainer has ever had has had Fly. If that was true of Cut and Strength and Rock Smash or whatever, if those were good moves, then every single Pokemon team now has exactly the same 7 moves. So they make the moves bad, but that has like the knock-on effect that like, oh great, now I need to get an HM slave so that I can like just dump all these crappy moves onto a Pokemon that I don't care about.
7. We call them HM friends.
Oh god, have you seen the Pokemon the thing? It's like an animation where it's a guy catches a Bidoof, and it's from the Bidoof's perspective, where it slowly realizes it's only being used to like use Cut or whatever.
I don't think I've seen that. That's funny.
It's a really sweet.
Great.
It's like this Bidoof, and it only gets let out of its Pokeball to like move a boulder, and it's so ready to fight and like win the battle, and then there's like never a fight because it's just there to move boulders or whatever. And it's
poor Bidoof.
And it's really the way it resolves is very good. It's really cool. But it's also like it's a very funny animation that just takes advantage of like a thing that came up from the games that like everyone knows about but is not part of the games. So anyway, I think I don't know how you fix HMs is part of it. Like I don't know how you.
I have 2 solutions. So one. I want to say Pokemon Solutions, which was Sun and Moon, the idea of having that little walkie-talkie that summons a Tauros, that wasn't satisfying to me because it wasn't my Tauros. Do you know what I mean?
So I played Pokemon Insurgents, which is one of the best, most edgelordy, wonderful Pokemon ROM hacks I've ever played. And it was like I don't know if it was the first one to do this, but it was definitely the first one that I played, where you would just have an item, like you would get Cut, but you would also just get like tweezers or something like an item that would functionally do the exact same thing. And I think I really liked when Pokemon moved to the I don't know, the item share, whatever the Sun and Moon and onward system of like you don't really need to have the HMs is kind of nice.
It was better than HMs.
I agree.
But what makes it not a satisfying solution is that it's not my Pokemon. It's just some random Pokemon that pops up.
Sure.
But it is better than HMs. Now, Monster Sanctuary, which is a game that I thought was doing a lot of interesting things, but I don't know if I ultimately liked 100%. I like Beastie Ball unambiguously. It's my favorite.
Sure.
It's my favorite in the genre. But generally speaking, Pokemon has been, like, I've tried Necomon, I've tried, and generally speaking, none of them held up to Pokemon. Beastie Ball exceeds it. But Monster Sanctuary does not, but it's doing a lot of interesting things. One of the things it does is it doesn't have the Pokemon have HMs, but the Pokemon themselves just kind of have abilities. So it's still, like, you're still using your own monster. And so you have to have with you a bird-type monster in order to get, like, the hover. And then the bird-type monster gives you the hover ability.
I like this.
And you have to have a fish-type monster in order to swim. And it kind of makes sense. Why does Lapras need to know Surf for Lapras to swim?
Yep.
So, like, the idea was just, it was inherent in the monster. It wasn't a battle move. And I think that's a decent solution because it's still your monsters. If you did want to make it a battle move, though, because I do like the idea that it's a move that can be used in battle, I think the only solution is that maybe the HM just shouldn't count toward one of your 4 slots. Maybe a Pokemon who learns an HM can use 5 moves instead of
But then you'd
4.
always teach a Pokemon that 5th move, even if it was bad, because, like, you get an extra move.
Sure, and maybe, therefore, it can't be, like, as good as Surf. Maybe, therefore, Surf needs to be nerfed in this version. But I don't know. I'd be interested in that as a solution. And if you did, it would be really interesting because you'd have some Pokemon who, like, essentially can cover more types because of that. But you would have to make sure the HM was hopefully not so weak as to be useless, but maybe like Cut, where Cut isn't. Cut's a normal move. I'd put Cut on a Pokemon as a 5th move. I just would never use it as one of its core 4.
I think one of the things that Pokemon Insurgents also did was I think also got the ability to, if you had like a Charizard or something, right? It would just say, would you like Charizard to burn down this bush? And it's like, oh, yeah, right. That would make sense.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that was charming. That was more, and it was more charming than using the weed cutter item or whatever, or the boat item. I do think that HMs, they feel so dated in a way that I'm glad to see them go. I think even handling them poorly by just giving you items or giving you just removing them, like, they're just meant to gate you from specific areas, and lots of games do that, and I feel almost nothing, whether if it's my Pokemon doing it or it's just like I at least now at this point in my life when I'm a grown man, I'm just like, well, it's gating me from the level because they need to gate me from doing that. That's okay.
Well, and the really contrived part of HMs is that you need the gym badge to use it out of battle.
Yes.
It's like, just give me the HM when I get the gym badge. Like, find a way, design better, guys.
Yes.
Design better.
Why do I
better,
also
Pokemon.
have to find the guy's golden tooth in the Safari Zone to get Surf? Or what? Maybe it's Waterfall. I don't remember which one. You get something from that guy. That's like one of the craziest quests in that old game.
Yeah. So we both love Gem 2. Is there anything else you would change about Generation 2 if you could?
I think all of the changes that I wanted as a child genuinely are all done in the remakes. I really like...
Interesting.
There's lots of areas that we lose in the original games of Kanto. Like, Kanto kind of has that lower resolution to it. But every single game that they've released since, people have asked and really wanted another game where you go back to another region that you've been to, kind of because it's kind of neat to see it again with fresh eyes, or like you've played a whole other game. There was something like really charming about coming back to Hoenn, and you have all of the TMs. You know where everything is, and it's just a little different. And it feels like coming back to your hometown after a long time, or it feels. It has like this quality to it, and I think something that I would have wanted if the Heart Gold and Soul Silver remakes didn't exist would have been like more time to talk to the gym leaders and other characters. So I guess maybe like I wish that there were more characters that you could talk to and learn about. It was really nice that you could refight all the gym leaders, that I think a lot of the gym leaders also had like places where you could go meet them and like talk to them. Like I think you can meet Blue on Cinnabar Island, and he'll like talk about how the island blew up and how that happened, and like little details like that. Like there's like these little things that you could go seek out, and I think they were also based on the calendar, so it felt like a natural extension of the original game, but they just obviously didn't have time for. And that's I'm not saying that that's what happened, but more like I'm saying like it feels like this real genuine addition to the game that I liked so much, and it's good.
Something I forgot, and you mentioned meeting Blue at Cinnabar Island, is how much character all of the towns have.
Yes.
And this is kind of going into kind of the density of the game, something else I really love about it. And then I'll get to my question of things I'd change.
Yeah.
Something else I really love about the density of the game is how much each city has something. Like the first gym town has the Bellsprout Tower and has the Ruins of Alf next to it. And the second gym town has the Slowpoke Well on one side, and on the other side is that forest, but also in the town is Kurt, who makes apricots. And really, no wasted space, because there's only one other building. There's like the Pokemon Center, the Mart, Kurt, the gym, and then there's only one other building, and in that building are the guys who have that cutting business with their Farfetch'd, who will ultimately give you cut. And it really just feels like no wasted space. But like every town has character like that. Goldenrod is everything. The fourth gym town has the Eevee challenge. You fight all the Eevee evolutions to get Surf, but also the Burnt Tower where you'll get Ho-Oh. The sixth gym town has that light tower. The fifth gym town has the guy who gives you Shucky. Well, the fifth gym town is a little less, but even the seventh gym town, the Lake of Rage, like, it's amazing. Every town gets a little side quest, and Sword and Shield, and I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but that was one of the things that really bugged me about Sword and Shield was the lack of that. And I don't think I identified that immediately. I think that's something you identified for me.
Yeah.
And in truth, it's true of Scarlet Violet too. Scarlet Violet are also moving in this direction where, to me, the towns feel more generic. And I think I told you the only town I remember in Scarlet Violet is the one with the elevators. And the reason I remember it is because of how much it annoyed me. But
that's also the town I can most clearly... I was just trying to think of Sword and Shield towns and Scarlet and Violet towns, and that was the one that also came to my mind.
Yeah. And Sword and Shield did not click with me. Scarlet and Violet I really loved because of, like, it's almost like they doubled down on getting rid of a lot of the things I felt made Pokemon special, but they also doubled down on the quality of life features, and especially being able to just send your Pokemon to fight without entering a battle was huge. And I really had a lot of fun with that game. But I do miss that feeling of, I know these towns, each town has a memory in it. This is where I found the Red Gyarados, and then Lance and I teamed up to take down the Team Rocket, who had a base below this building. And that base had the really annoying statues that send not one but two trainers to come fight you. But like, I miss that. That was great. I really love that about these old games.
Is it partially because I'm thinking about in Gold and Silver, you go to a town and then you kind of have like self-contained adventures within that town, right? Like Bellsprout Tower or you know, whatever gimmick of that town is. In the modern games, generally, I would say since Sun and Moon, when you arrive at a town, it's more like you arrive at the town and then you meet your rival or whoever like the story characters are for that game, and then you encounter the story that the game has set out for you. You don't really, it's not about as much dealing with that town's unique thing. Like, in Sword and Shield, there's a town that's like got Stonehenge in it, and I think it like is cool because it like foreshadows some stuff later in the game, but you don't get to like go interact with it. Like, you can see it from like a hill somewhere, and you see like this like monolith, right?
Yeah.
That town functionally is like it's a very small Y shape, and I think there's like one NPC in it that can like give you items or something, right? And so there's not really a reason to go back there. Two, I think when you get there, I don't think there's anything significant story-wise that happens there. And if there is, it's just you probably talk to a rival and they say, let's fight. Okay, bye, and then they run off. Like, it's not, like, memorable. And I feel like a lot of the modern towns are kind of like that, and that's fine because they're trying to do something different than Gold and Silver were. But I think that might be part of the like a symptom of what you're pulling on, is that, you know, and that's okay. The modern Pokemon game stories are meant for little babies, and that's okay. Like, that's fine.
But I miss those self-contained adventures. I think they gave character to the towns.
Yes.
But in terms of something I'd change, so I just marathoned it, which meant I played maybe too much of it in too short a span of time, and I also played it at single speed, which I know, like, my brother plays them all at, like, double or quadruple speed when he goes back and plays, because
that rules.
He likes rolling through them, and he Gen 3 is his generation of choice. I don't know if he's done it recently, but he was doing that for a bit, and that's fun. I like that, but I was just trying to experience it, and I think I played too much in too short a time. But something that occurred to me is that a lot of the battling feels samey by the end. And I think even in Gen 3, by introducing double battling, they start to change it up a bit. But if I were making a Pokemon game, if they made me lead designer on you're going to make a Pokemon game, I feel like something I'd really like to see is every other gym battle have a unique gimmick. And not like super gimmicky, but like this first one, normal battle. Second one, why not also make it a double battle? And then third one, why not have one of those weird rotation battles that you experimented with that weren't popular, but at least they're different.
Yeah.
And I just think that would be a real way to just change things up. And I wonder what you could come up with. Beastie Ball kind of does this. It has like a guy show up and he's like, I have new ideas for how we can play Beastie Ball different. And basically the point is to clown on him because his ideas are bad. But like, they are kind of a fun diversion when he does it. I kind of like it. Right up until he does it on the final boss battle. And then I'm like, oh, but I wanted to win fair and square. I know there's a story point to this, but anyway, I really liked that. I'd love to just see Pokemon really experiment with changing the type of battling, and in Gen 2 they just weren't there yet.
And I feel like I feel like they're kind of doing that right now with Pokemon AZ or ZA. I always say it wrong. I think that even though I think we kind of differ on like how we feel about the Arceus type games, like I think they're fun. I think the dodging mechanic sucked so bad. I think we agree on that. I think it's good that they tried something different.
I liked Arceus.
Oh, good. Okay, I thought the dodge mechanics like truly ruined it for you, because I think the last time we spoke, you were like really miserable.
Was I on a boss? Okay,
I think you were
think
like
the Electrode boss or something gave me trouble. I forget now.
No, I remember it was like there are a few times in our friendship where you've been like truly mad, and I was like, this like the Electrode, like it is unfun. It's not meant. The game is like asking you to perform tasks that it's not like really built for, and I think that it like kind of ruins the fun, and I think it ruined your fun a lot.
But ultimately I really loved Arceus, and I loved Arceus. Well, okay, we can't get into why I loved Arceus.
Sure.
We gotta wrap.
Yes. No, I think they're heading in an interesting direction. And I think that it's exciting that they're still experimenting on stuff. I'm also really excited for a new generation of people to play the Pokemon Coliseum games, which are going to be on the Switch. Oh, interesting. They're going to be. They were both XD and the original Coliseum are. They were shown on the GameCube Virtual Console. So I think that there's going to be like kind of a new generation of people playing those games. And I think my biggest hope for the future of Pokemon would be another Coliseum game, frankly. Just because it kind of straddles the line between... Because they're hard, they're generally harder, they're pretty weird. They're, in some ways, not a Pokemon game. They break convention in interesting ways. Like, that can be a whole other discussion. But I think that, like, if I was going to hope for something going forward, something like that would be what I'd hope for.
You know what I hope for? Let's Go Johto.
I am shocked that they haven't done that yet.
I love something the Let's Go games did, actually, talking about how the battle system got stale. The Let's Go games getting rid of wild encounters and replacing them with a little just mini game. So that the battles because the battles were exclusively trainer battles, I felt like the battles continued to feel fresher that way.
Yeah.
Then the wild encounters were an easy way to grind that was just a little bit of a break from the action. And everyone was mad about it at the time, or a lot of vocal people were. And I remember thinking, but no one likes wild encounters. And the better solution to wild encounters maybe is what Scarlet Violet did.
Yeah.
Where they just let you send your Pokemon out to fight on their own. Mm-hmm. And that was fun and nice and maybe still felt like a battle. But I'd really love to see Johto in 3D. If they did that, just for my own sake, I wish they'd make the day-night cycle, more like a Harvest Moon thing. Especially because imagine you could add seasons. That's what I would do. I'd add, but I know they won't do that. I know they want the day-night cycle to reflect the real day-night, and that's for immersion reasons, and that would be a better experience for me if I were a small child. Just as an adult, I want to play it like a Harvest Moon game, and cycle through that day-night faster.
There could be a world where like it is untied from the reality, and I think that would be interesting. They won't do that because they have spent the last 15 years making sure that like weirdly the Pokemon world is so deeply tied to the human world for like things like that.
Yeah. And as a kid, I think it was great. It's like one of those things that we talk about in this podcast where it's like, I don't like it, but I get it. And I think I did love it when I was younger. And I think it might be the right call even. But if I were Emperor of the Universe, I'd make them change it. All right.
That's good.
Well, I think that's all I have. I do want to say, like, I clowned a lot on this game at points. I hope it comes through how much I love this game and still enjoyed my experience through it another time.
I mean, raw audio, we're talking about 2 hours of recording, so, like, I you know, whatever you cut this down to.
Some of that was complaining, though. Some of that was complaining, is my fear. My fear is that, like, people are going to read this and be like, he thinks the level curve, even though it was perfect for his personal playthrough, is wrong. And it's like, yeah, I do think that. I think what the level curve is trying to accomplish is to encourage you to evenly level and encourage you to experiment mid-game. And I just think it's not the right way to do that, even though it totally worked on me. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was the right way to do that. I think there must be a better solution. But
it's hard to talk about something you hate for 2 hours this enthusiastically. That's all I'll say.
I so love these games. And being back in them was so magical. So thank you, Seven, for coming and talking to me.
Hey, anytime.
For the listeners, we had tried this podcast before, and Seven talked a lot about Cassette Beast, which I haven't played, but he loves. And I had not played Beastie Ball yet, so I couldn't do the same back. And I said to him, we need to do this again, and we need to base it all on Generation 2, because I love Generation 2. And you can talk about Cassette Beasts in relation to Generation 2, but Generation 2 has to be our backdrop, because we both just love that generation. So
yes, of course.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, and thank you all for listening. And until next time, if there ever is a next time, because this is going to be a nightmare to edit.